morning, everybody, and welcome again, ladies and gentlemen, to Government House. As I've said before, I see the media play a critical role in this territory, and so part of one of the things I've always wanted to do is to make sure we have a chance always to discuss any issues and to have regular catch-ups to discuss things. What I thought I would do today is just outline, for me, what are my key priorities. There's obviously lots of things that are on my mind, but the key priorities for me, and I thought we could discuss a bit after that, if that makes sense. So I won't speak for too long, but if I outline my key priorities, which are around disaster preparedness. We are making sure that we are as ready as we can be, as we are still in, obviously, the height of the season. Good governance, and making sure that we continue the progress on accountability, transparency, and having the highest standards of good governance. Security, and making sure that we continue to make improvements to our security as a territory as a whole to protect all of the people in the territory. And recovery, where I'm very conscious there's many people still in difficult situations, and making sure that we make progress in the long journey that we have. So what I thought I'd do is very briefly talk a little bit about each one of those, and then we can take some questions on the back of that. But starting first off with disaster preparedness. And credit to our Department of Disaster Management, but working across government and with businesses and with voluntary organisations. We are obviously at the height of the season now, and we thank God that so far we've been spared from any events, but we shouldn't be complacent. So the priority is to make sure that we continue our preparations. We have 21 shelters currently operational. We have repairs underway at 13 others, which will be coming online very soon. We also have marine shelters are being cleared and prepared at Parakeeta Bay and Seacowls Bay to remove the derelict vessels as well. And there's been a huge amount of effort to clear debris from across the territory. We're also working on more resilient communications. The Department of Disaster Management is restoring the early warning systems across the territory. Sirens as well are going up across the territory, and the weather stations. And the United Kingdom has also supported us in getting more resilient communications in the event of anything that may happen, including putting in place backup satellite communications across the territory for government. The government is also replenishing contingency supplies if we needed them, supported also again by the United Kingdom government, which has funded supplies and generators. In fact, I'm very happy that, not happy that it happened, but the people will be aware that the power plant went down in Anegada last weekend, and I was very pleased with the rapid action that BVIEC were able to take using 2 of those United Kingdom generators to get instantly the power back on by within 24 hours. But there's still much to be done, so message still is the same as always, which is people need to not be complacent, to keep their own preparations, to help out others, and to collectively stay ready and be ready. Next, I wanted to talk about good governance. And as all of you are aware, I made it clear from my first day or arrival in territory that I support all of the principles of good governance, transparency, accountability, and good governance in all aspects of public life. In the speech from the throne, the government laid out its agenda with a recommitment to a number of good governance measures, including legislation and including moving forward on the establishment of commissions that are being talked about. And I wholly endorse that, and I'm pleased to see the government recommitting to those measures. So I welcome that direction. I welcome the commitment from government to promote the integrity standards, the integrity of public officials, public officers and institutions. I recognise that these have been included in speeches before. And I want to underline my commitment to turning words into actions and working alongside government to ensure that the appropriate institutions and the supporting administrative mechanisms are in place to ensure progress. I'm happy to note that we have seen progress. The Human Rights Act was laid on the table in the House of Assembly, which is good progress. And later this week, we will publish, coming out from the Cabinet Secretary, the Premier and I have agreed with Cabinet that we will release the first set of Cabinet decisions. So these will then come out in a regular format once a week, but it will start the first of those this week, later this week. And that's all part of the overall commitment from the government to promote openness and transparency. Turning to security, firstly, I actually want to thank all of the security agencies, the police obviously, but those who work with them, customs, immigration as well, for their hard work and dedication in supporting the security of the territory. Also up at the prison as well. As with many others, I know our officers across different agencies are working in far from ideal conditions. But we have made progress in a number of areas. The government committed $5 million to supporting the priority security needs of the territory. Infrastructure repairs are happening at our police stations, lots of work at Roadtown Police Station, but also we've got funding from the United Kingdom, which helped fund the Roadtown Police Station repairs, but also the sister islands police stations to get them repaired as well from United Kingdom funding. And there's a renewed surge on interagency cooperation to protect our borders, with good cooperation across the police, customs, immigration, ports, the airport and others to reduce illegal contraband entering the territory. We've also increased the number of officers trained in the use of firearms. Again, here the United Kingdom provided funding to both train officers and gifted what we called armed response vehicles. And I was pleased to see results over the weekend where these the vehicles were out, the officers who've been trained were out and got some significant results in terms of taking ammunition and contraband drugs off our streets. So pleased to see those results. Finally, I want to turn to recovery. This continues to be at the forefront of my mind. I'm very conscious of still a lot of people in need, whether that is those in the public service working in far from ideal conditions, or individuals who still are recovering in their own lives in terms of the damage that was done to them. I would wish we were more advanced than we are. We are now over 1 year after the hurricanes of last September. And as I said when I did a speech marking 1 year on, I think it's important that we don't get used to the temporary conditions that have been established. And we need to have that sense of focus to make sure that our recovery for the long term continues. I was disappointed that the government's recovery plan was withdrawn from the House of Assembly last week. The plan, prepared by government, involved a significant amount of work from public officers, along with input, obviously, from the public and wider stakeholders. The Government of the Virgin Islands proposed and put forward the Recovery and Development Agency, and obviously the House voted and agreed to back the Government of the Virgin Islands plan for the Recovery and Development Agency. And it's important that that agency has a plan that it can work and it can now operate effectively and get our long-term recovery going. The implementation of the plan is key to progressing the next stage of our recovery. It establishes obviously the key priorities for ministries and the RDA, but also the plan is the start for any discussions on recovery financing, getting money into the territory, getting money moving to projects, getting those projects delivering improvements for people across the territory. It is the start, having that plan, for discussions about the UK loan guarantee to enable that to move forward. The UK loan guarantee, essentially, with the plan, can offer BVI the ability to get money into the territory at much, much cheaper borrowing rates, saving millions of dollars for BVI, allowing the recovery to move forward at pace. So I'm aware that the plan is going again to the House in, I believe, on the 2nd of October, and it's critical that now we have a plan to move forward. But just to end, I want to reiterate my full commitment to seeing these islands recover quickly and successfully. Also that of the United Kingdom government, which has and continues to provide significant funding and assistance to support the territory. I'm fully determined that BVI will be restored to its best and even more resilient in the future. That's what gets me up every morning, focus on making sure that we get the islands back for everybody who lives here into a state that they are proud of, that they are successful in as well. So those are my top priorities. There's obviously many, many more things that are keep me busy day to day, but happy to sort of take questions on any of those topics. Thank you.
Governor, good morning.
Good morning.
Zan Lewis, is a BVI Radio. You made mention about the recovery plan was withdrawn, but I'm not sure why was the plan withdrawn from the House of the Assembly? Why wasn't it presented?
Well, that's really a question that needs to be put to the Premier. It's the government's plan. It's for the House to decide how they want to handle it. The plan had been agreed to be put forward. It's for the Premier to explain why that wasn't then.
You saw the plan before it was presented?
Yes, so anything that goes to the House Assembly, obviously I chair Cabinet. I don't have a vote at Cabinet, but I do chair Cabinet. The plan obviously came to Cabinet and was discussed and agreed.
What do your views after seeing the plan?
So the key thing is we have a plan that sets out the long-term direction. I think we've made progress on our recovery. If we look, I mean, I think Disney is still there. Disney is, outside, we can see as a visible sign of the progress we've made. We had different phases to our recovery. We had the first phase, which was about making sure that we supported people in need the most, those early days when we had to rescue people from different places, make sure that cut-off communities were supported, make sure we didn't have security become more of a concern than it should. We had a phase of getting our infrastructure back up, and I applaud all of those who supported, particularly BBIEC and others, and the water and power and public works, getting our infrastructure going. The UK supported that significantly. But now the stage is at making sure we have that long-term plan. We've got to move beyond the fixes that have been done into a long-term direction for the recovery. So that's what I support, is making sure there is that plan. That has to be the government's plan.
Governor, I understand all of that. You said that already. You would have read the plan.
Yes.
You would have seen the contents in the plan. After reading and seeing the contents in the plan, what are your views of the plan?
Well, the plan was out publicly, so it went out for consultation. People would have seen it. My views on the plan itself, there's a lot in there. I support the government's agenda on this plan. There's things that the government themselves have decided. It has some ambitious proposals in it. It is there, and rightly, for the public to give that feedback on, which happened, a process where they could be consulted on, particularly in terms of the principles of building back greener, stronger, smarter, etc., are good principles. The key thing, though, is having a plan which says this is the direction we're going to go in, allows then financing to be opened up, allows money to come into the territory, allows ministries and the RDA to work together to make sure that we get things rebuilt.
Davion Smith, BVI News, good morning, Governor.
Good morning.
The Premier would have mentioned in the House of Assembly that the RDA has been operating without regulations. Given that the very reason it was created was to ensure transparency, accountability, good governance, that sort of thing, what do you make of it being run without regulations?
So the RDA was put forward by the government to the House of Assembly. As you know, the House of Assembly approved the legislation. That's the key part which puts in place the Recovery and Development Agency. There's a series of technical regulations in terms of how it operates, which the RDA has put forward. They just need to be brought forward by the government to approve. But there's nothing that should get in the way of that. However, going back to the earlier point, the RDA can't operate effectively without a plan. So the starting point is the plan, and then moving forward from that point. But the RDA has all of those regulations there. They just need to be put forward by government.
So, okay, good morning,
Good
Governor.
morning.
So while this is in train, what is the RDA able to do right now while we wait on the House of Assembly?
So the RDA has legislative authority, as I said. It's obviously was put forward and approved by the House. So the RDA should speak for itself. But from what I see of the RDA is forming. It's got its board in place. It's got getting its key posts in place. It's making sure it's ready to move and move at pace when the plan is there. That it's been doing and doing quite successfully, I believe, to get things ready. It's taken on some of the areas, so it has worked on clearing debris, which was where the United Kingdom funded some extra funding to help us rapidly clear up debris, particularly in areas where it's going to be a risk if we face the storm. There's still a lot of debris around that I was worried about. That may present us with a challenge, if we end up each bit of debris becoming a missile, essentially. So it took some early action with the agreement of Cabinet to, under a short-term plan whilst we await a longer-term plan, to use the UK funding to clear up debris.
One of the things that seems to be bothering quite a number of persons, even persons in the House of Assembly, that it's propelled that the RDA seems to be operating as a government in itself. Is this true? If not, could you justify?
So to be honest, it perplexes me why that's being said. The RDA was proposed by the Cabinet of the Virgin Islands, was put forward by the Cabinet of the Virgin Islands to the House of Assembly. The House of Assembly approved the RDA. The legislation is very clear about the RDA works to the government's plan. It's not a separate government. It doesn't have any mandate to be a separate government. That was debated a lot in the House. Everyone was there discussing it, I think. Not that I'm in the House, but people hear the debates. It was very clear in terms of its mandate and how it should operate. And it's waiting to do that. It has the plan. Once it has a plan, it can work with the ministries to get on. But there's no such thing as a separate government. This is the Government of the Virgin Islands proposal, and the RDA waits for that plan.
Would it be accurate to say, that Cabinet governs the RDA?
So the RDA is governed by legislation. It was the House of Assembly that approved that legislation. The Cabinet obviously put forward the proposal. Well, you know how legislation works. It goes through Cabinet and then it goes up to the House of Assembly. The RDA has a board, which we talked before about the members of that board. And it is the board that governs the operations of the RDA. But it is working to government's plan. So there's no separate, it's a bit like a statutory agency or statutory body or areas where we have rightfully things that are operationally business in a way, but it all has to work to a government agreed plan.
So if it's governed by legislation but there are no regulations, how is it then being made to operate currently?
Well, it needs the plan and it needs those the regulations put forward rapidly. They're there as I understand, they just need to be put forward.
Governor Malika, my first Mailings, a newspaper. We're returning to your speech from the Queens, which is the second you were delivered in 2018.
Yes.
You just mentioned that you're happy about the integrity standards that you will reference, and you're hoping to turn words into action. Of course, you know, and you did allude to the fact that there's a lot of repetition. You zoomed quickly in your speech on the register of interest, which is something that continues to languish, and that's part of the integrity mechanism. How is that going to be turned into action?
Well, so on all the years, as I said, I think anything that's in the speech from should be delivered. Those are government's priorities that are put forward. I read out the speech obviously, but it is government's speech in essence. That's why I was pleased the government committed to all of the good governance areas, as well as other important areas of legislation in the speech from the Governor. As I said, things are starting. The cabinet decisions this week. I think is an important step. On other areas, there's a commitment from government to move forward on those. And we're agreeing a timetable to make sure that those can be brought forward. So they need to go through the cabinet, each part of them, whether that is updates to some of the legislation, updates to some of the key commissions or areas that need to, as we outlined in the speech from the throne, those will go to cabinet and then we'll need to legislative approval will go to the House of Assembly. We're just agreeing that timetable at the moment. I'm happy to set that out in more detail once that's agreed. The key thing for me though is this is, as I've talked before, this is absolutely vital to build the institutions of the state. Good governance isn't there just as a catchphrase, it isn't there just as a sort of a principle to be wheeled out every now and then. Accountability, transparency, this is about key thing about the people knowing and being able to ensure that all the institutions are working on their behalf and working in a transparent and accountable way for them. So the key thing with any good governance is actually what does this mean to people out there in BVI, and how does that make a difference for them?
So piggybacking on what you just said about the people knowing, so we'll talk about two areas of these integrity mechanism, the freedom of information and again, the register of interest,
Yes.
which continues to be blank. Are you, because you said you've talked to the government and there's a plan that's going to be put together, are you able to lend your voice to seeing that the book is no longer blank? We're heading to a next election phase.
Yeah. So in freedom of information, there is work underway drafting it. There's a sequencing bit around it because there has to be work done on data protection as we make sure we do it in the right way. On the register of interest, as you saw in the speech on the phone, a commitment to review it and make sure that it is up to date and that it should be, as with other areas, transparent and accessible. That's something that's part of those discussions.
Governor, things are starting, but one issue, one legislation that is starting in operation is consumer protection bill. I believe we have delivered 2 throws from the speech we have mentioned some time ago that the government will be bringing that a year ago. We said so then it will be coming. This is frustrating, I believe, because you continue to repeat yourself, and this would have been happening with previous governors. It's an embarrassment, I think, that you continue to say that government will bring it and still is not here. It's an embarrassment to you say that you can't say this and nothing is happening.
Well, as I said, anything that goes in the speech phone, I fully believe should be implemented. It's for the Premier and on that issue, but on any area where it falls under a ministry, it's for the Premier to explain the progress on that bit. It's not for me to do, it's under his area. But my overall thing is I believe anything that's in the speech phone should be implemented.
But to use a sad situation and so on.
I'm not going to comment on whether it's sad or not. I think it's an important piece of legislation. That's why it was in the speech referendum. I see that from what I hear from people about the impact of not having legislation in terms of consumer protection. But in terms of the progress of it, that's for the Premier to update you.
What you agree that it's taking too long?
As I said, I think it's important that if it's down there, it should be implemented. But it's for the Premier to give you the details of the time. It's his day.
Governor, going back to an area that I'm sure you might be able to speak more about, you started telling us more about disaster management, which comes directly under you. I'm not sure if it escaped me, but there was an investigation into how aid was distributed following the 2 major hurricanes. Was the report ever published?
Yes, so there are a number of investigation over one word, but reviews of what happened around the aid distribution. One was carried out by SEDIMA, I don't know if that's the one you're referring to. That, I believe, is completed and it's coming through the system, so it will be discussed under the Cabinet soon, and then yes, that should be made available. I'll update as soon as I get details on the timescales.
And what has taken it so, why it has taken so long to come out?
That I'll have to ask SEDIMA on, to be honest. SEDIMA did a good job, I know, coming over and doing this, but I'll have to ask them.
On the subject of...
Going back,
Go ahead.
same subject you're going on?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. On the subject of relief supplies, could you tell us what the quantity of those supplies in stores right now are, and what are they? What types of supplies are they?
So I don't want to get into details of each of them because the focus has been on in each community making sure that there is adequate support. That varies across communities and it varies across supplies. The Director of Disaster Management, I know, has full inventory and can set out more of those details, but it's something for me to get into each part of it, if that makes sense.
Governor, I hope it's prudent in me asking you, seeing that you've been integrally involved in recent cabinet meetings and we have the first batch of decisions that are going to be coming out sometime this week. Tell us what to look forward to or what we can expect.
So, well, you'll see later this week. So the best thing to expect. The Premier and I agreed that these will come out for Thursday this week. They will be put out weekly by the Cabinet Secretary. The Cabinet Secretary is the official record taker. She does it from position of the public service, all the values of impartiality, the public service embodies in terms of how she captures things. And the Premier and I then make sure that those are accurate, and then they will be issued on Thursday, the week after each cabinet. That makes sense. So because cabinet happens obviously on Wednesday morning, then the minutes are reviewed at the beginning of the next week's cabinet, and then as soon as possible after that, the cabinet secretary to write it up. Those will then go out. Now, those decisions, just an important point that is worth clarifying, those decisions will be the decisions of cabinet. Now, they don't capture all of the discussions, because it's an important principle of cabinet that ministers are the ones who have the vote in cabinet. They make collective decisions. Anything that they decide is a collective decision. It's the Attorney General giving legal advice, but he doesn't have a vote. There's myself chairing, so I don't have a vote either. So it's just those decisions. Ministers need to be able to disagree, challenge, agree as they wish, and those are private discussions. It's the end decision, which is now a government decision, and that is what will go out. There are some matters which may be particularly sensitive, matters pertaining to national security, or if it's about an individual personal data or personal privacy issue. So there will be some issues which will not go public, and the Cabinet Secretary has guidelines on those, and also the Premier and I do a check on that as well.
Governor, you always preach the issue of governance and transparency, and you need to explain one particular area, sir. There's an issue now before the House as regards to the Speaker, and the word is that she will contest an election. But there's another issue as regards the Constitution protecting her, and also no one who has a ministerial position can sit in that chair, in her chair. Explain to me, sir, the situation where the junior Minister of Tourism sat in the seat as acting or deputy speaker. Is that constitutionally correct?
Well, there's two things there. One, there's a question for the House itself, and there's the House who determines who is the speaker. So it's not for me. Secondly, on the second question, that's something the Attorney General, so I would comment on that in terms of the constitutional those matters.
But it's something that's been currently looked into as regards him sitting in that seat, in that position.
In terms of the junior minister?
The junior minister is something that's been currently looked into?
It's not something I'm going to comment on. It's not a matter for me. The House is for the House to look at those issues. And the ones who have to ensure they have impartiality in the House. I'm not going to comment.
You're aware of what the Constitution says, sir?
I'm very aware of the Constitution.
Alongside
the voters of my children, it's the only other thing that's always on my list.
And the Constitution says no person that holds a ministerial position should not sit in that seat. It says that. Mm-hmm. And you agree with me that the junior minister is a minister, so to speak. Right? Right? So in other words, he is going against what the Constitution says. You already said you don't want to comment on the Constitution. But as governor, who offers advice, who also wants transparency and governance, obviously it's a situation we'll want to declare.
So it'll be,
have your voice there.
It's a matter for the House. I'm not going to get involved in matters for the House. Obviously, as you say, I'll listen to hear what discussions are held on it, but it's a matter for the House.
Still on this, go ahead.
I'd like to shift topics. Claire Shevchik, BBI Beacon. I'd like to shift topics a little bit to the recent report involving last year's police shooting involving Mr. Hernandez,
yes,
and whether or not there are any further plans to release any more details about that, and also whether Mr. Hernandez's family has been informed of the details of that report.
Yes. Well, firstly, two things to say actually before I answer your question in detail. But firstly, any death is a tragedy. I'll comment on Mr. Hernandez's background, but any death is a sadness for those who he leaves behind. So my thoughts go out to his family, to his friends, thoughts and prayers to them. Secondly, in terms of the actions, the police officers have to take very difficult decisions, and they are trained to do those, and they have my respect for what they do every single day to keep all of us and all the public safe. Now, in terms of the shooting, this was a significant event. I won't comment on the details of the report. I'll comment on why we decided to get a report done, if that makes sense, because the report speaks for itself. It's not for me to add commentary on it. The reason why we asked for an independent report to be done is because the police carry huge responsibilities when they have to sadly take somebody's life or event leads to that, to protect themselves. It's right that there's an investigation to look at it, and right that it's done independently, outside of the police force. That's standard in most cases. I was very grateful to Turks and Caicos for doing that to us. What they've put out, as I understand, Turks and Caicos police have been handling the relationship with the family as well, but I can't comment on that. That's fair for them. In terms of the detail that was put out, there was a full file, essentially, on all of the issues, which was handed to, obviously, TCI Police did their investigation, Turks and Caicos Police. That was handed also in full to our Director of Public Prosecutions to look at, are there any issues to be taken forward from that basis. And then what the Turks and Caicos Police put out was essentially a report that is all of the information that can be put into the public domain. You can't obviously put personal information about the individual, can't put information out that is operationally sensitive, that will give away tactics of the police or things that might make them vulnerable. But the Police Commissioner has the full report and has also worked through all of any recommendations from that as well for our own police force.
Sir, I just want to quickly jump back to...
Sorry, just before we continue, we're taking the final two right now.
Okay, thank you.
She hasn't been able to ask any questions
Yes.
yet.
Good morning, Governor. Early Backus, the BBA Platinum. Back to the topic of transparency and accountability. The Elmore Stout High School wall. I understand that the previous governor had ordered an audit into that.
Yes.
Has there been any progress on this? Also, annual audits. There seemed to be a backlog. I think the last year, something was 2012. Is it concerning to you that this backlog exists, given that it's a barrier to accountability, and have you expressed this to the Premier and the Minister of Finance?
So on the second question first, in terms of the audited accounts, I assume you mean in terms of the where there has been a backlog. So that's something that Premier and I talk about regularly, and there has been progress made on that. As you're aware, there was a backlog, I think, from 2007. I think it predates my time here by quite some distance. And those accounts through the Auditor General have now been started to be cleared. So, as you mentioned, up to, I think, 2012, 2013, I think she's close to the next year. So there's been good progress made. That's an absolutely critical part. We should never get into a situation where accounts aren't done as a routine thing annually, and I'm pleased that progress is being made to update them. On the high school wall, yes, the Auditor General is doing that report. It is concluding, and I will then consider that report and will make that available to the House of Assembly once I've had a chance to consider it.
Okay, and there was also some recent accusations by Honorable Julian Fraser that you are not, quote-unquote, living up to your responsibilities, and that he saw an issue where some public servants are allegedly running for office, and he feels as if you should intervene in this. Your take on these accusations?
With respect to the Honourable Member, actually this is something that is just routine. So if a public officer runs for an elected office, it's very clear in terms of the rules. They have to choose whether they're going to run for elected office or stay as a public officer. So the rules are pretty clear, they're pretty standard. Any individual who has declared as running as a candidate for the elections when they happen has received a letter saying that they need to choose whether they step back from their public office or withdraw their nomination. If they decide to keep their nomination going, then their employment with the Government of the Virgin Islands will be ceased. And they're very clear on that. That's just standard practice. And
yes, final rounds of questions.
Yes. On the subject of declaring for elections, a number of members in the House of Assembly recently expressed some discomfort about reports that the Speaker of the House will be a candidate under the NDP ticket. And she has been asked to confirm those reports because there's this question of whether she can be impartial while presiding as Speaker of the House. What's your take on it? Do you believe that she should in fact come out and say whether, and if yes, do you believe she should step down?
So that's a matter for A, the Speaker, B, for the House. It's not a matter for me. Thank you.
Governor, on the issue of national security, we have not been able to touch much on that. We know that the Royal Virgin Islands Police Force have been making some great inroads in terms of cracking into gun possession, ammunition, and with drugs. But a recent discourse with the Commissioner of Police, he was ashamed to know the slow pace that it's going towards getting CCTV up and running in most of the areas that is needed. How involved or how aggressive are you towards this getting up and going?
So very aggressive, I think would probably be the phrase. The Cabinet agreed extra funding, as you're aware, $5 million to improve our security. And the plan was pulled together by the security agencies to work through all of those areas. CCTV was one of those, not the only thing, but it was one of those. There's been progress made. There are now CCTV cameras up. I won't go into the details of all of them. There's still more to be restored, but there are CCTV cameras have gone up. And also improvements, for example, getting the police boat, or another police boat back on, which is coming in the new year, I believe, and getting the customs infrastructure repaired as well. So it's top priority for me that we get all of our security, not just repaired, but we get it into a stronger position. Okay, I'm going to...
Another police matter. Is there a timeline for releasing the report on the prison breach? So we commissioned a independent report on the prison by Dr. Smith, I think his name was. I need to check in with the latest on it, but again, I'll update on the timescales for that. And similar to the principle I take on most of these things, we'll make public everything that can be made public without hitting any operational or confidential sensitivities.
Governor, the last time we were here, sorry to interrupt.
Okay.
The last time we were here, you spoke about the auditor. You mentioned the Auditor General is looking into the Viva Airways matter. Were you giving any updates since then?
So I obviously discuss many things with the Auditor General. I'm not going to give updates or running commentary on issues that she is looking into. That's for her to look into them, and then when she's ready to conclude, for her to put those forward.
But can you say that the investigation is still ongoing?
It's still ongoing.
Now, to the recovery plan.
That's probably the last.
Yeah.
Okay, this is the last.
The
That
recovery,
was the question.
Yes.
yeah. The recovery plan, you said, is a starting point to the RDA working. And it's also a starting point because to bring it to the House, it must get the majority approval in the House. Now, you would have heard persons said, if they had to vote over again for the RDA, they'd vote no. So there might be a problem there, a serious predicament. So if it comes to a position where this plan is brought back to the House and it does not get the majority vote of the House, do you see this as a problem? Do you, as regards the function of the RDA? Do you see this whole thing as a problem?
Well, I see it more. It's an issue for a problem for the recovery. The key thing is, what I feel, it pains me every single morning. I'm going to the high school later today, and I will see high school children in what are temporary conditions, which are completely far from ideal, and we should not expect that or deliver that to our citizens. So it pains me every morning to know that there are members of the public, there are individuals, there are public servants working hard in conditions that are not where they should be. What I want to make sure is that there is a long-term plan with the backing, as I've said before, the UK that's there to give financing that allows the money to flow at a rate that is a lot cheaper, saving many, many millions of dollars for the territory. As I've said, that's the priority to get on with it. I'm perplexed as why people don't want to get on with it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Governor. Your final comments to the media?
Well, we've had quite a wide-ranging discussion, so I won't do any more comments other than just to say thank you again for your time. As ever, I see the press as a vital part. When I talk about good governance, the press are part of that as well. You are key also to all of the things that we've talked about today. So thank you for what you do in your daily jobs as well. And I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you.